All right, great. Let's go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. I'm very glad to have you all with me. We have a very exciting topic for today's webinar. Is low code ready for the enterprise? So if you're looking for this session, you're in the right place. This is really meant to be a 1 to 200 level introduction, both to the low code market as a whole, as well as the unique value areas that AgilePoint adds over some of the providers that you might be familiar with. Now, before I get too far into the presentation here, I wanted to quickly cover off a few housekeeping items. Right, as you've probably seen here, this is a webinar session, and as such, your lines are muted. Now, that being said, we do want to encourage interaction, and the best way to do that throughout the course of the webinar is to type your questions into the questions panel in the Zoom control window. If it's something that we don't get a chance to address throughout the course of the session today, we do have about 10 or 15 minutes towards the end to go over those questions as a group. So please don't hesitate and chime in whenever something comes up. So to give you a quick background here, my name is Lucas Drege. I'm a solution specialist here at AgilePoint, which means that I work with customers on a pre-sales basis to help them investigate the platform and begin to design their applications and solutions to address a wide variety of different business challenges. So over the course of the session today, I have some content that we've borrowed from the analyst community, as well as some of my own personal experiences here in working with AgilePoint over the last few years. So as a first step, what I'd like to do here is just as a refresher for those of you on the line who are maybe talking to us for the first time or don't have the greatest of background with the low-code market, let's quickly cover off why use a low-code platform, right? This has really been an area of hyper growth over the last few years, right? And there's really a number of forces, both on the labor side, as well as in the market in general, that are driving this multi-billion-dollar industry. Right? The general consensus comes down to really these three factors. Right? The first of which is there's simply a demand for software that is much larger than what most organizations can deliver. Right? It's generally accepted, if you look at Bureau of Labor statistics and things of that nature, that there is a huge shortfall for the types of resources that can build these applications. Right? I mean, these applications take lots of time to create, in some cases months, and in some cases years, depending on the scope and the complexity of the application. Next, we're looking to close the gap between the users and the designers of software. Right, so for those of you on the phone, ask yourselves, right, when was the last time the first set of requirements put forth by a business user was actually representative of what they wanted or needed? In my experience, it's entirely possible that this has never before happened in the history of the world. What is more likely, on the other hand, is that for each new project, many rounds of discussion, wireframing, and prototypes ensued before the business accepted their new piece of software. And this is really a challenge that low code is looking to hit head on, right? It's this ability to, remove the need to interpret requirements and take that and put it into code, right? Which often sort of results in this delayed software that often does not well represent business needs. Right? So low code providers like AgilePoint, as I mentioned, are taking this challenge head on by abstracting away the code and allows the users and the designers of software to be on the same page and reduce the amount of back and forth required to finish a business application. For most of you, process is a language that most business users will understand, and having that process or data-driven application represented graphically means that the user can see and touch the application as it's being built. And then the third point here is really to help reduce the cost to deliver this custom software. Right? There's a few ways that low code handles this, but it's primarily about empowering less technical users to address a larger part of the application development process. Now, we're not suggesting that you give a platform like AgilePoint to someone in accounting, right? And we'll talk around the different ways that we can identify these additional pools of users that can help deliver software. But the scenario that we found ourselves previously leaves many of our business users in a very bad spot, right? With no one able to deliver the software that they need to work efficiently and to wow their customers, whomever they might be. Okay, so now that we have a good understanding of the different use cases and drivers for something like a low-code platform like AgilePoint, let's quickly spend a few minutes talking about the different types of low code and where each will fit. Now, for this segment here, we're using some hot new research from Forrester to help lend some clarity in the market. Right, according to Forrester and Gartner, low code is one of the fastest growing segments in application development today. And for good reason, right? When applied appropriately, it can yield truly transformative results. Now, along with that well-deserved hype, there has been a lot of confusion in the marketplace regarding the various offerings. So let's take a quick look at why that might be. As of last year, Forrester was tracking more than 100 providers of low code, with many new providers entering the market with each passing day. Now, some of these are focused on creating database applications, and others are geared towards empowering business users to solve their own problems. Some are only in the cloud, and others, like AgilePoint, give you a wide array of deployment options to suit your usage and compliance or security requirements. So for today's conversation, we're going to focus on two types of low code that prove to be ready to tackle the needs of an enterprise. They are low code for application and delivery professionals, and another category called digital process automation wide. Now, you might be wondering what these mean because it's not immediately clear based on their names alone. So let's start off with low code for application development and delivery professionals. Right, these sorts of platforms are typically viewed as an alternative to coding applications in Java and C#. Right, now they carry functionality to build a wide array of application types, portals, data-driven apps, mobile-first use cases, and can even include some process support. Right, in this category, you can think of Salesforce as one of the primary providers. Now, these platforms tend to generate visually appealing user interfaces, but are maybe not the best fit for a pervasive digital transformation where the goal is digitization of operations all up. They can handle some simple process routing scenarios, but tend to fall short when more complex workflow is required. They'll often have fairly intuitive data modeling native to their platform, but oftentimes do not have an extensive library of connectors to interact with existing business systems that you might have on your premise or in the cloud. Now, let's contrast that with the category DPA-wide. And remember, DPA is simply one of the new Forrester acronyms for digital process automation. Now, the DPA-wide flavor of low code is best suited for an automation of a wide variety of processes and for the creation of data-driven, form-based apps or single-page applications. Now, some of these providers, like AgilePoint, have emerged from BPM sorts of scenarios and have really broadened the application's capabilities to become a much easier to use low-code platform. Now, we'll talk through some of the new capabilities that have been released in AgilePoint version 7 that make AgilePoint truly a unique flavor of these two types of offerings in just another moment. But in short, right, AgilePoint is a very unique offering in this space, right, because it does blur the lines between the two flavors of low code. Right, having come from strong BPM roots, AgilePoint is capable of addressing any process automation need, right, from simple departmental processes to the much more longer-running, complex processes that can touch any area of the business. Right, taking an example from the manufacturing vertical, this might be a shop floor process that enables just-in-time manufacturing, or order management use cases that control the receipt and fulfillment of an order from an e-commerce store. Now, I mentioned that AgilePoint is truly unique in this area because it does blur the lines between these two types of low-code platforms. Prior to version 7, AgilePoint's capabilities were primarily relegated to the process-driven applications area. But with the huge leap forward that is AgilePoint version 7, our newest release, many customers have chosen to standardize on AgilePoint for all of their application development needs. So by combining the general purpose applicability of low code for AD&D pros and the deep process automation capabilities from the DPA-wide category, you now have a formidable weapon for digital transformation, right? A single unified application development platform for every business need. Now, there's lots of new capability in version 7, but from my perspective, One of the keys to connecting these two worlds and to realizing that wide-ranging success is our page builder, where we give the ability to create custom landing pages, custom portals on top of your AgilePoint deployment. Right, and this ability to create portals is really one of the strengths of the low code for AD&D world, right? And is something that the digital process automation category typically never really focused on. It was always a gap that was filled by other sorts of technologies. And that's still true. Many of our customers still choose to embed their AgilePoint deployment by things like their task list, their end user components, process and workflow into other systems, right? Things like Salesforce or SAP and SharePoint. But now AgilePoint has this capability natively in the platform to create portals and pages for everyone within the organization. So what does this mean to you, right? It means that now you can build these portal experiences on top of AgilePoint from a shared homepage for the entire organization, all the way down to individual sites and pages for each team, group, or division within your organization. With an intuitive menu builder, employees can easily navigate to their site and in just a few clicks, be back at the homepage, HR, or any other division. So let's take a few examples here and show you what this can look like in real world. All right, the first I have here is an e-commerce store portal. Now this is a provider that wanted to speed up the order management process using AgilePoint. And through the implementation of AgilePoint version 7, are now able to, from a single pane view, process new orders, look up customer data and histories, as well as execute exchanges and returns, all from a single page. My next example here is a manufacturing organization that wanted to create a portal to better coordinate with delivery drivers, as well as their field service staff. Right, so no longer do they have to navigate through a list of applications within AgilePoint. They need only visit a single page that is tailored based on their role and job function. And again, as we mentioned previously, right, these users can easily navigate to their page via a custom menu that is connected to the rest of the organization. So HR information is really just a few clicks away. And then lastly here, one of the lighthouse cases from AgilePoint over the last year or so has been with the city of Boston. Now, the city wanted a better way to interact with its citizens, and they wanted to easily surface the most commonly used AgilePoint applications to those citizens as they interact with the city and request various services. Now, I'll go into a short demo of this application here towards the end of our session today. But as you can see, what I have on screen here is a portal page that I've recreated using the page builder, right? And this is actually meant to mock up the boston.gov website. We really wanted to give them a sense of what their public-facing portal will look like once built on AgilePoint. Okay, so we know a little bit now about the different types of low-code, where to apply them, and really the unique value that AgilePoint brings in terms of bridging these two worlds, right? And giving you that single application platform for every need in your business. Right, now with that being said, let's quickly touch on a few of the critical capabilities that AgilePoint delivers that many enterprises are now marking as a requirement for any low-code platform. Now this first slide here talks about building any application of any complexity. Right, and we touched on this a few slides ago very briefly, but for a long time, AgilePoint has been able to deliver on half of this promise. Right, that is the ability to build apps of any complexity. Now, with the huge leap forward in AgilePoint version 7, building any app of any complexity is no longer just a dream. Right, you've long known about our robust enterprise-grade process capabilities, but with the advent of AgilePoint version 7, we are now positioned to serve as the enterprise-wide standard for application development. So with that said, let's quickly run down a few examples of the different types of apps you can build within AgilePoint. Right, the first being process-based applications. Right, these are the apps that enforce your company standards and service level agreements and can help differentiate your organization by automating every touch point of the customer journey. Next, we have data-driven or form-based apps. Right, not every application requires a workflow or a series of approval steps. In fact, in our experience, roughly 80% of an application portfolio for an average customer comprises of data-driven applications, right? Because sometimes you just need an app that reads and writes data to databases like SQL Server and Oracle, Salesforce, SAP, or any of the other 65 supported sources off the shelf. Next, we have an area where many low-code providers tend to struggle, right? And that is in the area of headless or orchestration-based applications. Right, this might be the case where an event in one system triggers data to flow through a series of other systems, all without any sort of human involvement. Of course, we also have mobile applications, and whether you want to use the AgilePoint native mobile application, or you'd like to create an app that exposes your AgilePoint applications in an app that uses your branding, right, in a public store, private store, or for device-specific use. So lots of different ways that we can take our AgilePoint applications on the go, whether we're online or offline in the field. And then lastly, SaaS-based applications, right? Using AgilePoint to create SaaS apps for internal users as well as for customers and partners. Now, the next critical capability that we're seeing here is that your low-code provider like AgilePoint should work with all of your existing systems and technologies. Right? We understand better than anyone that in this era of constant flux and constant change, many of you are adopting new technologies, right? Innovative cloud services, in addition to legacy on-premises investments. Right? What you'll probably see in the marketplace is that many vendors really only offer a handful of connectors into common systems, meaning that fairly soon you'll have to resort to much more generic REST web services endpoints, which are certainly not friendly towards less technical users. With AgilePoint, on the other hand, integration with a wide variety of systems is as easy as can be. Now, currently, the product supports more than 70 cloud and on-premises data sources and more than 700 total activities. Right? This means that you can go much further, right, without ever having to write a single line of code. Now, a little bit later on in the presentation, I'll talk about how we can extend the platform, and a big part of that is by creating new integrations and new activities. But for now, right, let's take Salesforce as an example. Within Salesforce alone, there are more than 35 workflow activities to create, read, update, and delete against any out-of-the-box or custom object that you've created in Salesforce. So things like leads, accounts, opportunities, cases, campaigns, you name it. And again, if there's something that you need that we don't have right off the shelf, you can use our SDK to create a reusable custom component. Now, the platform must also empower the less technical user, right? The entire goal behind AgilePoint version 7 was to reduce the technical barrier to create these applications. As we mentioned earlier on in the presentation, right, the application developers are scarce, right? They're costly, and many organizations simply don't have them in large numbers. So by being able to tap a larger pool of application developers, you can now build these applications much faster and move on to your next project. Now we'll talk about how this strategy has been employed to great effect in just another couple of slides. But for now, let's talk about how some of the ways that AgilePoint makes this dream a reality. Right, so first it starts with having a deep yet accessible tool set that doesn't require technical knowledge. Right? One of the constant accolades that we're receiving from the analyst community and among our customers is that AgilePoint is one of the most straightforward to use yet powerful and innovative platforms in the market. Right? One of the ways that we're doing that, especially in version 7, is with the use of our data entity. Now this radically simplifies how we create a data model for an application. Right? One of the more technical aspects of any app is how we're using and storing data as a part of that application. And with the data entity component, we're no longer required to use SQL database skills and tooling to create our data model. It can be done directly in the browser via point and click. Now, data entity is not only a very powerful, user-friendly abstraction over working with standard database tables, it also helps serve as the foundation for how we design our applications going forward. Now, whether you want to use an AgilePoint data entity or an existing entity that may be in Salesforce, databases, or SharePoint, AgilePoint in version 7 will now intuitively automate app layout and design by mapping your entity to various elements on the UI side so that the user only needs to lay out the UI and the data will be automatically persisted back to that data source at the time of your choosing, whether that's in real time or at specified intervals. Additionally, right, there must be guardrails, right? And we need to have a balance here with respect to enabling productivity and ensuring that our organizational standards and policies are adhered to. Now, it may not always make sense for a business user or a less technical user to handle integration of data, no matter how easy we're making it. So we can take advantage of our users' relative strengths while still ensuring that our policies are followed. Right, and the way that we're doing that is by having one of the most granular permission frameworks in terms of how we manage users, groups, and roles, and how they interact with our platform. And what's more, right, we'll integrate seamlessly with your existing identity providers, right, things like Active Directory or ADFS, Azure AD, Salesforce, Google, Okta, among others. Now, your low-code platform must handle extension in a sustainable manner, right? And this is really a troublesome area for many low-code platforms, right? Essentially, with AgilePoint, what we're looking at is, for any of the custom components that we'll go through in just a moment, these become part of the core platform that can be configured and reused by less technical users. On the other hand, with many other low-code platforms, what you're looking at is there's maybe a window within your application where you can dump some C# or some Java code to extend that particular application. So let's take a look at the different levels of extension, right? Personalizing your form or UI experience with your company's branding on for CSS or JavaScript. Process extension is something I alluded to a little bit earlier on, right? The ability to create custom components that are reusable. The data layer, which is referring to our data entity component. Portal extension, which we'll show in just a moment, right? The page builder and how we can create a custom page experience in Portal on top of AgilePoint. Custom branded mobile applications, API level extensions, Work Center extensions, server level, and to bring your own portal, essentially to insert AgilePoint natively into any portal or system that your users are using today. And then lastly here with number 5, it must work with your existing security and governance policies. Right, so that means things like choice and deployment, a model that fits your risk profile. With many low-code providers, it's only in the cloud or only available on premises as an example. With AgilePoint, there are 3 deployment types, each with a single code base, which means that if you decide to move everything to the cloud, as an example, that's a no-touch migration for those applications between those deployment types. It must support your existing identity provider. We touched on this a little bit earlier, right? The ability to integrate seamlessly with your identity store to ensure that appropriate levels of access are being maintained. It must be architected for scale and resilience, right? AgilePoint's stateless engine means that scalability is built right into the product. And I'll give you an example of web scale usage in just another moment. And then lastly here, whatever your security team can throw at us. Right, we've seen just about everything, proxy servers and port forwarding, DMZ deployment, and AgilePoint is a highly secure, highly resilient platform that can serve as your enterprise-wide standard for application delivery. So let's quickly touch on a few best practices here for low-code success. Right, and the first one is to think big, start small, and scale up quickly. Right, now this is often the challenge for many of our customers as they tend to find us after having failed with a competitive solution. Right? So they're often inclined to want to throw their largest, toughest application at us from the start. Now this works well enough for us and our platform, but because these applications tend to be larger, it's tough for the user community to see the value right away, right? It often takes time to build these larger, more complex applications. So with that being said, right, start with the small but impactful wins that can be spun up quickly and everyone can touch and see. Build on those successes slowly, right, and market that success internally within your organization. Right, I have a slide where one of our customers, the Salvation Army, has done that to great effect. In short, don't try to boil the ocean from day one. Right, our platform can handle it, but may not be the best recipe for success internally within your organization. And then lastly here, getting executive buy-in, right? For things like digital transformation and a radical change in your application strategy can be difficult, right? But there's a few ways that we can shore up support from the C-suite and other leaders within the organization, all the way down to the frontline individual contributors. All right, so what defines digitally transforming your organization, right? What are the responsibilities for executives, and what do the individual contributors need to bring to the table? Right, what is the impact of this software to each team, group, or division? Now, the change that we're advocating here is oftentimes as large a culture change as it is a technology change, right? And as a part of that, one of the best ways to ensure success is by setting clear goals for your transformation, right? What are the objectives? Is it something strategic, like improving various customer metrics? Or is it a tactical business driver to make work more efficient? Now, if we communicate these goals and ensure that everyone in their responsibility is on the same page, right, we're on our path to a successful transformation. So communicate this progress early and often using the metrics and goals that you've defined, right? How are we doing against those goals? And then understand what kind of shifts, if any, do we need to make to continue our success or to course correct. Now, I've mentioned a few case studies here, and I'd like to go through those quickly here before we jump into our demo. Now, the first here is a great real-life example of the effect a citizen developer can have and how it can play a crucial role in application development. Now, we're starting here with our story for the Salvation Army with a single employee, Jonathan, who had no previous development experience to speak of whatsoever, and he wanted to make work more efficient across the company. And he wanted to ensure that as much of the available budget for the Salvation Army goes towards helping those that are in need, which is really at the core of the heart of the Salvation Army's mission. Now, they were looking at various low-code solutions and came across AgilePoint. Right? Soon they found that we may not have all of the same glossy marketing materials as some of our larger competitors, but that we were much more innovative and, most importantly, much more responsive to the customer needs. So let's take a look at his story. In 2017, Jonathan was just getting started with AgilePoint. He was going through training, getting mentoring, and just generally getting his feet wet. But despite being very new to the platform, was able to build 10 applications all by himself. Now in 2019, Jonathan and his boss decided that 20 apps were attainable. Right, so to that end, Jonathan was now very comfortable with the platform and producing applications at a rate that, frankly, most organizations can only dream of. Now, last I spoke with the team, they had already built 8 applications by early May of 2018. And for 2019, are looking to again double that target to 40 applications. Now, imagine, this is what Jonathan was able to achieve with AgilePoint version 6. With the advent of AgilePoint version 7, I'd say they're well on their way to meeting, if not increasing, that target number. Now, just to give some perspective on the other potential uses for AgilePoint, right, our previous case study was really focused around the efforts of one individual with no prior development expertise. Right, here's something a little bit on the other side of the spectrum here. We have one of the largest energy companies in Europe, right, and they've been with AgilePoint now since 2012. Right now, while Jonathan's story was certainly inspiring, it's important to understand, the scale at which AgilePoint can help transform an organization. Now, I don't know a whole lot about the use case here behind this customer, but what you can see is the extreme volume and throughput, right, the paces that they're putting AgilePoint through. As you can see on screen, right, since 2012, they have executed over 1 billion transactions, and at any given time have something like 200,000 concurrent instances of applications running, right? Truly a testament to AgilePoint's ability to pervasively transform an organization and digitize every aspect of company operations. Okay, so that's what I had as far as my slides. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly transition over to my browser, and let's go through a few demos. So we had mentioned a little bit earlier on how the city was looking to find better ways to interact with citizens as they requested various services from the city. So here I have the page that was designed with AgilePoint's Page Builder. And as you can see here, right, it surfaces everything that I might, as a citizen, need to know about the city. Things like how to get city services, right, street cleaning, city building hours. If my car gets towed, I know where to go pick it up. But down here, what you're seeing are various tiles. Now, all of these tiles here will correlate to an AgilePoint application, right? So again, as a citizen, or perhaps an internal employee, I need to go to one place to access everything that I need to do on a day-to-day basis. Things like my tasks and work list, as well as various applications. So what I'm going to do here is I'll bring up a data-driven or form-based application, right? This is a new addition in AgilePoint version 7, right? The ability to create applications that do not have a workflow component. Right, and as you can see here, I'm filling in a request for a construction permit. So what I can do as an example is put in my address here, right? I can bring up the particular location where I'd like to build on either an address or coordinates basis. Right, we've also seen things like land parcels as well as another potential option here for our state and local government customers. But what I'll do is I'll just bring up a particular location here in Boston. And as you can see here, based on the address, we've brought up the location here on this Google map. Now, Google was just a choice that we made for this particular application. You know, we've certainly seen customers using Esri Maps or Bing Maps, right? One of the great parts about the Page Builder is, you know, in addition to predefined integration into various components, and I can essentially bring in anything on an HTML basis, right? So it gives me a lot of flexibility in what I'm surfacing here on the page. And then I can just go ahead and fill in some additional details here about my role, right? Am I a homeowner, a contractor, right, or some other interested party? So a great way to address, you know, what is oftentimes the largest part of an application portfolio, right, is this ability to create these applications that read and write data to different sources, right? Again, things like Salesforce, SAP, NetSuite, SharePoint, and et cetera. Okay, so that's one example here. I wanted to just move on here in the interest of time and bring up another application that we've built for a top 10 global retailer. Right now, this is an organization that really wanted to modernize how they approach tax operations within their organization. And there was a great article written up about this case here in Forbes that we'll send along post the webinar. But essentially, in an increasingly Amazon world, right, many organizations are looking to really streamline and digitize various aspects of their operations. So what I have here is a custom landing page, right, and surfacing not only AgilePoint components, right, things like applications, my task list, the ability to bring up reports and search through the various reports. But let's just give you a sense of the experience here for their primary use case, which was the tax controversy process. Now, this is an organization that operated primarily with Excel spreadsheets, right? Excel spreadsheets obviously have their benefits, but their own challenges as well, right? It's tough to get good versioning. They often live on various users' desktops, right? So the challenge of having instant access to high quality data is not always very straightforward. So what they said is, can we get around this Excel limitation here and be able to use those Excel files as a part of my business application? So to start this application here, what I'll do is I'm just going to bring up the Excel document. And as you can see here, AgilePoint has extracted all of the content from this Excel document and has pre-populated my form on my behalf. Now I can obviously add additional documents if I so desire. Right, and this can go off to essentially any of the 70 supported sources that we offer off the shelf, or any of the additional components that you may have integrated using our SDK. But once these documents have been uploaded, I can simply click Submit and begin my business process, right? Routing this document through various levels of approval prior to a digital signature via DocuSign. Okay, so I wanted to quickly go through a couple of those demos. You know, this is part of a larger series of webinars that we're hosting In some of the subsequent webinars, we'll really dive a lot deeper into things like additional use cases, right, and how various organizations are leveraging our platform. But for now, what I want to do here is just quickly go to our Q&A function and see if anyone has any questions for us. Okay, so the first question I'm seeing here is with respect to the Salvation Army use case that we talked through in the case study. Question is, how did the Salvation Army identify their citizen developer? Right, this is a question that we're seeing come up quite a bit, right, because it's one of those areas that can be very transformational, but it's not always immediately apparent how to identify these types of users. Right, in the case of the Salvation Army, what they did was they looked for users with a moderate level of technical aptitude. Right, we're not necessarily looking for the professional developers to begin, leaving their previous job functions and begin developing applications for the business users. Right, so really look for those users who have a moderate level of technical aptitude, right, and an interest in solving their own problems. Right, and this can really be just about anyone from any department or any area of your business, right? You really just need to look for that moderate level of technical aptitude and then go from there, right? In most cases, there are some considerations that need to be made with respect to, that user's prior workload and how that will correlate, with this new role as a citizen developer. But those types of conversations, tend to be easily hashed out over time. Okay, next question is, will we be sharing the slide deck? Yes, absolutely. We will be sharing that. We'll be sharing a recording afterwards as well. Not a problem. I also have a question on the trial version of the application. Yes, absolutely. So that's a great point. Just quickly cover off, how you can consume AgilePoint here. Right, the first thing that I'd like to point out is that the AgilePoint Community Edition was released a few months back, and this is free forever. Right, so this is a great way to sort of begin your journey of exploring AgilePoint and how it might be useful within your organization. Right, now there are some limitations with respect to users, applications, etc. Right, but one of the great things and something that we're constantly recognized across the community is the ability to pay as you grow. Right, from our perspective, the bill at the end of the day should correlate to the value that you're getting from our platform. Right, so to that end, not only do we have the community edition, right, but also things like the pilot and the starter packages to help start small, right, prove out the value, and again, pay as you grow. Okay, so I'll leave the webinar up for just another few minutes here in case we have additional questions coming in. But if that's it for now, I'd like to thank everyone for joining the webinar today. It was my pleasure to host you. I hope that it's been valuable, and be on the lookout for the next instance of this webinar series.